This video is sponsored by Polygon, a library of textures and models for professional 3D artists. Click the link in the description to learn more. Alright, enough fooling around with flaming monkey heads. Let's start making that donut. So I've got a brand new scene open in Blender, so clear whatever you did in the last video. And what I'm going to do is delete the default cube just by hitting delete, and I'm going to replace it by hitting Shift A, remember, to add a new object. And then underneath mesh, we've got the base meshes that you can start with. So you want to start with something that looks closest to what you want to create, which in this case is a donut. So this one is the closest match, a torus. So when you click the torus, you can see you get this, and it's okay, but it looks a little thin. It's a little bit weak for a donut. Thankfully though, in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see a box. And if you click the box, you can see you get settings. And this is gonna change the look of the torus. Now, by the way, if you don't see the box, it's because you accidentally performed an action after you added the torus. So if I was to, for example, click on the donut, even though it's already selected, it's gone. And I can't get those settings back there. So some actions in Blender, you will get options immediately after you perform an action, but if you do another action, it clears it and you don't have those options anymore. Anyway, so with these options here, you can see I could change the resolution of the donut, and down here underneath major radius, I could change the size of it, how thick or how fat the donut is. So speaking of the radius and the size, it's a good idea when you're building something in Blender to start with the correct real world scale. So this major radius here is saying that this is 0.4 meters. The radius, so a diameter, is double that, which means that this is currently an 80 centimeter donut, which is almost half me. It's a big donut, very big. By the way, if you are American and you would like to use a different unit system, you can do it over here in the properties underneath units. You can change your unit system to imperial, and then it will use feet and inches and penny farthings or what other crazy units you guys have come up with. You can use that if you want, but for the tutorial, I'm going to stick to metric. So this size here, we want it to match the real world. So the research that I did says that most donuts are about 10 centimeters. Right, like about that big, right? So a radius is half of that, so therefore this should be 5 centimeters. So if I just typed in here 5 centimeters, we would get the correct thing, which is 0.05 meters. And then if I adjusted my minor radius, I mean, there's obviously no measurement for this, but like, you know, how fat the donut is totally up to you. If you want it to look like chubby, you can, you know, go like that. But I don't know, I think something around like 0.28, I think that looks pretty good. Maybe 0.26, I think that's what I used previously times the times that I did it. But anyways, like that. There we go. That's the one, that's the size I'm gonna use. And then the other thing is the resolution of our donut. Now, you might think that you would want to use as high a resolution as possible, right? Because I remember I did that when I was starting out with Blender. Every new object I added, I used the most vertices I could, most highest resolution, not realizing that actually what you want to use is the lowest resolution and then use a subsurf modifier, which we'll get to next, to smooth it out, because then you've got less vertices to work with. It's easier to work with a lower res mesh than a higher res. Anyway, point is we want to set this to something low, but something that will at least have the correct overall shape that we want. So, you know, something like this. And also I want to keep the size of these faces. I want to keep them close to square, like as square as possible, I want to say. And you're not to know it because, you know, you're just starting out. But the reason for this is later on down the road, we're going to use displacements. And it's much better if you've got square faces for displacements. So anyway, something like that is pretty good. So these are the settings I'm going to use. You have a second to use it. And we're done. Okay, that's it. We have the donut ready to go. So we've added an object, but let's say you want to change the shape of that object because that's a very common thing you want to do when you're building 3D creations, is you want to tweak it to look how you want it. So right now, this is the most perfect donut that ever existed in the history of the world. You could have like a donut competition and no one would ever be able to make as perfectly round and smooth shape as this, right? Because computers make things that are perfect and in the real world they're not. So that's why imperfection is the virtual perfection, which is a quote by someone, but it's very true. I don't know who said it, but it's very true. So what we want to do is make it look a little bit lumpy, a little bit misshapen. So to do that, we need to enter into edit mode. So if you go to the top corner, top left corner, you can see we are in object mode. And if you change that to edit mode, you will see that we get this, which makes it look like a grid, like a cage has appeared over it. Or the hotkey for this is tab, because this is a very common action. To switch between object mode and edit mode is tab. By the way, when you are in edit mode, the only thing you can do, the only thing you can click on is within the object itself. Like if I'm in edit mode on that and I tried to click on the lamp or the camera, you can see nothing happens. The only thing I can click on is the object itself. So just something to keep a note of. So while in edit mode, you can see that now that I'm clicking around, I can click on these little dots here. And each of these dots basically is the shape of the donut, as you can probably guess, right? And if I use the same hotkeys that you remembered from the last one, G to grab, if I was to G and grab this up, you could see that I would make a spike in my donut there. Now, I don't want just one singular spike because that would be horrible. And I also don't want to, like if I want to make this donut look lumpy, I don't want to go like this one and then this one and then this. Like that's a lot of work and it's not even going to look very good. What I want to do instead is I want to like grab one and then like have it affect the vertices around it. So there's a tool for that and it's proportional editing. So at the top of the screen there's a little button, or the hotkey for that is O to turn that on and off. And then when I do that, if I use the same shortcut, G, to move this one vertice, you'll see that now as I move it, the rest of the donut comes with it. But it only looks like the whole donut's coming with it. If I was to scroll up, like scroll on my mouse right now, just scroll up or down until you can actually see what's this little circle appear around. So if you scroll up, it'll get smaller. So anyways, if I do this, you can see that I can affect the area of vertices around it, right? So what I want to do is just I want to make it look lumpy. So around that sort of area, and I'm going to hit Z because I'm moving it and I want to move it along the Z axis. So it's just going up. And now you can see I've got part of the donut, which is a little bit lumpy. That's actually probably a little bit too lumpy. So let me just undo that and let's try it again. Move it up. Oh, come on. It's cleared my thing because I undid it anyway. So something like just a little bit lumpy. And then I'm going to grab like this one here and I'm going to move that down a little bit. So now I've got a weird little lumpy bit of donut. And then I'm just going to like misshape the rest of it, right? Because no donut is perfect, although they do try. Just make it look a little bit squishy, because otherwise it's going to look like I don't know, like at a water park, right? There's little inflatable rings that you get. I'll never forget, as a kid, we go to the water park a lot. And yeah, there was like this ride called the Calypso Bay at Wet n Wild, Australia. And I used to love like stacking the rings on top of each other. And they kicked me out of the pool. They told me I had to get out because you're not allowed to stack the rings. But it was so fun. I wanted to stack them up and then be inside it and like roll around. But the lifeguards, who have nothing better to do, told me to get out of the pool. Anyway. So as you can see, I'm just grabbing parts of the mesh and I'm just moving it. You don't have to copy my exact motions as I'm doing this, just so you know. Just make your own misshapen donut. Don't copy mine. Follow your instincts. Make your own lumpy looking thing just by clicking G, etc. Anyways, like that. Look at that. Horrible, weird, misshapen looking donut. That's what you want. You don't want a perfect looking donut. You want something that looks weird. So well done. You've made something weird. Now you're probably thinking, cool, but can we please get rid of the jagged look? Because it looks like you would cut your finger running across this donut. It's too jagged. So if you are in object mode, which is important, you have to be in object mode, and you were to right click your mesh, you have these settings. And at the top there, you've got two settings, which are very common, shade smooth or shade flat. So we're gonna use smooth. So flat is used for things like buildings, flat planes, things like that. And smooth is for organic shapes like this one. And it's gonna basically, where there's two faces, it's gonna try to smooth them. Yeah, basically, it'll try and make it look smooth. Now, you'll notice it does look smooth, but the edges of it, you can see it does still look sharp. So shade smooth is just like it's changing the way it looks, but it's not actually affecting the actual shape of it in any way. So if you want to actually make this higher res, what you need to do is use a subsurf modifier. So the modifiers are found in the properties. So this is the properties here, by the way. We haven't really talked that much about properties, but it's this whole section on the right here. So if you click on the wrench spanner, I always get them confused. You can tell I've never got my hands dirty. I'm gonna go with spanner, and this is the modifier panel, okay? So it's empty right now, but if you click on add modifier, you get this lovely list. And the one we are looking for is right down here where it says subdivision subsurf. And it's probably the most common mod or like effect that's used across all 3D software. What it does is it smooths out the mesh, right? And as a modifier, so what's good about modifiers is that it is what's called non-destructive, meaning that it's not applied. Like I can work on other parts of the scene and then I can come back to the donut and go like, I want it to be smoother. And then I can change the smoothness. And then I can come back to it later and go, it's too smooth. I want to change it again. So you're not actually like, nothing is being applied. It's just, it's all the settings are kept there so that you can come back and change them as you need to. So modifiers are fantastic. So what this subsurf modifier is doing is basically, if you look at each of these faces here, so this is what's called a face. And it's like when you've got 3 or more vertices and you add a solid face between them, that's a face. I don't know how else to explain it. But a subsurf modifier, what it's doing is it's adding like another grid between it and it's taking like the average shapes of it. So like on the edge there, like where it was previously like sharp, it's doubled the resolution and it's averaged it out to try to smooth it. So what you're looking at is one subdivision because that's the viewport setting. The render setting is what it will render at, right? So when we get to that stage, that's the setting it's going to use. So if I was to increase viewport, it's doing another subdivision over that. If I was to increase it again, it would make it even smoother and smoother and smoother. You don't want to go too high though, because the higher you go, the more graphics is going to be used to render it in your viewport or when you do your actual render. So keep it low, but 1 is fine for this. Okay, so well done. All we've got is a lumpy donut. And yeah, we did make a long video. So go ahead and join me in the next video and we're gonna make the icing for our lumpy donut.